Eric, I know we're going to talk about some current stuff. I hate even bringing up AEW stuff with you because I feel like I know where it's going right away. But
But,
you and I,
come on, see, you're aiding and abetting this misinformation narrative campaign. It's like you said, I hate to bring it up because I know exactly where it's going to go. Did I not put Tony Khan and AEW over for being different?
Yes, you did.
Did I not express that sentiment with emotion and unambiguous clarity?
Yes.
Then
you're right. I was all wrong. Let's just hit the reset button. Let me give you a chance. Hey, Mariah May and Tony Storm had a heck of an angle where she left Tony Storm a bloody mess. What'd you think, Eric?
Ugh.
You loved it, right? They tried something different.
Well,
it's different then, by God. So it's got to be good. You loved it. Thank you. Because it wasn't me saying you're not going to like it, because that's not fair to you. So give you a chance. And I know how much you love blood on the ladies on television.
There's just something scintillating about it. It makes me tingle every time I see it.
Well, I'll be honest. I loved it because it was different then. This feels different than what WWE or AEW rather has been doing. It was a really long storyline. And I think a lot of us were waiting on the turn to eventually happen. We just didn't expect it to happen in the manner in which it did. And Mariah actually did an interview where she talked about getting a phone call from Tony and Tony laying this idea out a year ago. Hey, I've got an idea, but it's a long-term idea. Now they're on a collision course for Wembley. A year-long story, Eric, and it's paying off at a big show. I know maybe you don't like the execution of how they got there, but you got to give him props for that. That was cool.
If what you said is true, because we're hearing secondhand, thirdhand information as part of the story in terms of when it was presented and Tony's reaction to it, all that. Let's assume every syllable of that is 100% accurate. Yeah, props, because it's story. We can debate the quality of the story and what a quality story needs, and whether or not this particular story, just like the Tony Khan Elite NWO Light angle, that was a story. It just sucked and made no sense. It didn't connect to the audience. I guess you could call it a story, as this is a story. And I'm not defending it or criticizing it, actually, because I haven't followed it enough to be able to do that, which is why I'm willing to take on its face the fact that this idea was presented, or a version of it, and what we're seeing is a manifestation of a creative decision that took place a long time ago that reflects long-term booking, at least an attempt, regardless of whether it's good or bad or indifferent. Yes, kudos. It's an attempt. I agree with you.
I want to talk to you a little bit about advertisers, because I'm not in the television business. Don't pretend to be. I know you're not in it necessarily anymore, but boy, you knew a lot about it once upon a time. And some of what we're going to talk about here may have changed, and you and I don't really know now. So I just want to ask. But one of my concerns when I saw it, because as a wrestling fan, I was blown away with the story and the execution. I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. That was awesome. But then I had pause for a minute, and I took my fan cap off and I put my business owner hat on, and I wondered, boy, is WWE going to use this against AEW with the ad agencies? Are they going to turn off some female buyers for the different ad agencies who already assume that wrestling is lowbrow or it's for poor people? That's another thing about wrestling fans. Or it's for the uneducated, something that people think about wrestling fans, or it's for kids. Either way, if it's for kids, you don't want a bunch of blood on there. You darn sure don't want bloody ladies. And I know once upon a time that was a no-fly zone, but I do feel like, hey man, if it's okay if the guys do it, then how can we say it's not okay if the girls do it, even if it's not your cup of tea? I don't mean to say girls dismissively, you know what I mean. But I'm just saying all that to say, I think AEW only has two advertisers, DraftKings and State Farm. I think they're making the lion's share of their money through the television rights thing, not necessarily participating in advertising. Is it that big of a deal to advertising in 2024 to have the ladies bleeding like that on television? Or is that thinking from yesteryear?
I think it's an even more sensitive topic today than it was. It was only a big topic in the past because Vince McMahon wanted it to be. When it
Okay.
was appropriate, when it benefited him, he wanted to criticize Turner Broadcasting for the use of blood. And this was before I ever got into management. When I was an announcer there, that happened back then, and happened several times during the period of time that I was in control of WCW, or partial control at least. And we did the same when it came to WWE. When they would, either because it happened, quote unquote, the hard way, or as a natural result of the contact in the ring, and it wasn't part of a script, of course, we would bring a lot of attention to that to point out the hypocrisy. But that was done almost internally. And yeah, our ad sales people would use it, and so would their ad sales people would use that kind of thing against us. But I think the general audience now, I think people are so much more hypersensitive to everything now. Like, you can trigger someone by walking past them when the wind shifts direction and they think it's your fault. I mean, people are so hypersensitive, and that includes people in the. Now, this is where you're on the money. See, everything else around the issue is debatable. It's subjective. I like it. I thought it brings reality to it. I think it brings more drama to it. Good or bad, whatever I think about that doesn't fucking matter. It's subjective. We all have a different take on it. What's not subjective, what's less subjective or less obvious in terms of its subjectivity, is how ad agencies feel about it. It's how they feel. Not what the numbers say necessarily, although they can work against you if they're bad. But even if the numbers are good, if the content makes an ad agency feel, or a network feel like it's the wrong thing to do, even if it's out of fear, which a lot of decisions are made based on fear. People are
Yes.
very risk adverse, especially when it comes to advertising. That's why television is such a treacherous business to be in right now, is decisions are not being made just with numbers. Feelings, predominantly fear, are driving a lot of decisions and choices, and to create, and not just television, but movies as well. So I think, and it's one of the reasons I hate blood. It's not because visually I can't take it. That's not the issue. The issue is when I see it, because I don't look at it like a regular wrestling fan. When I watch wrestling, I'm looking at it as a producer. I'm looking at it as the guy that has to be responsible for the bottom line. Whether I am or I'm not, that's how I view things. And when I see what you saw, I have the same reaction you had. Now, and I don't mean to, I'm sorry, Conrad, I'm on a roll. If you want me to stop, you want
No,
to
go
ask.
ahead. Go ahead.
If you go back to my interview with Stu Snyder, really, really good conversation about exactly what we're talking about. I'm using Stu's words now. I'm not trying to make myself sound more intelligent than I am by ripping somebody off. But from Stu's perspective, and it's obviously true, wrestling over-indexes typical programming in terms of its rating. It gets good ratings. It under-indexes in terms of revenue relative to those ratings. Meaning, if you get a great rating for your show, if AEW hits 1 million viewers tonight, but the advertisers look at that product and go, I don't want to go anywhere near it. The value, if a lot of advertisers feel that way, and by the way, none of them are free thinkers, right? They follow the pattern. They're like fish. They just swarm around in the ocean, going wherever the most food is. Nobody's going to buck the system, so to speak, when it comes to ad agencies. If that content makes a buyer feel queasy, like it might be the wrong thing to do for some reason that they can't even articulate, but it's just how they feel deep down inside. That ad agency is not going to recommend that buy to their client because they're not going to want to take the risk. No ad salesperson wants to have to answer to a client that picks up the phone and says, "Hey, Eric, you put $5 million of my budget into a program, and this is what I just saw. Why would you do that?" No ad person wants that call. So they'll make decisions based on not getting those types of calls and that type of content, regardless of how the dirt sheet internet wrestling community feels about seeing women in blood. If it makes people squeamish, it's bad for business. And when you go back to the conversation about over-indexing and under-indexing, let's fast forward that just a little bit. We still don't have a deal between WBD and AEW, not announced anyway. That means they're still deciding. Why in the world, and this is me, why would you take that risk? Right now? The problem that AEW has, which is the same problem, by the way, WWE had with SmackDown. The numbers are different, but the problem is exactly the same. Fox didn't redo SmackDown despite being number one in the evening across all television on Friday nights and all the other bullshit PR, here's my headline of the week storytelling. None of that fucking mattered, because when it came down to the point where somebody had to grab a calculator and go, okay, it's going to cost us this, and here's what we've been able to get from it from an ad sales perspective, and we can't afford it.
Yeah, they lost money. I mean, that's what nobody talks about. Fox lost money with WWE. I mean,
and that is such a glaring and important point of all of this rhetoric about the renewal and what's going to happen, and Dave Meltzer's speculation about doubling and tripling their license fees because, oh, look what's going on in sports. All that silliness, because that's all it is silliness. It's wrestling fan silliness at its lowest level in some respects. None of it matters. Now, if Fox couldn't make money with WWE, and it's 2.1, probably 2.3 million viewers on average, and AEW is getting 700,000 viewers, and advertising in general doesn't like wrestling to begin with, why make it that much harder by focusing on the blood? And that's a business question. It's not an anger. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm not yelling at a fucking cloud. I'm in my treehouse. It's as close as I'm going to get. But it's just an observation based on experience and common sense.
I'm not saying that this is a hard and fast rule. I'm not saying it's a fact. I am saying that I have bought millions of dollars in media advertising for my mortgage companies through the years. And I have sold millions of dollars in advertising through our podcast. And what I found is more often than not, the buyers for those agencies are ladies. And I think a lot of ladies, I'm talking not the lady in your life who knows you're a wrestling fan, and so she's a little familiar with wrestling. But I'm saying if you just bebop around some, 30s, 40s, 50s ladies, they have an opinion that wrestling is for kids. And when they see this, it makes me wonder, is there pause to putting some advertisers there? I think it already puts you in a box because it's wrestling. We've all heard that. We're all familiar with that. We all believe that to be true. We know that to be true. But I wonder, does the box get even smaller when you have ladies with blood? Creatively, as a fan, thought it was awesome. But I did wonder with my business hat, is this going to be a net negative? Creatively, I'm fulfilled, but I do wonder, is it going to be a net negative? And I hope not. I really do hope not.
Another aspect of this, and this is the human aspect of it, because you're right, the vast majority, even back when I was actively involved, I don't want to throw out a percentage, but I would not be surprised if someone came to me and said, you know what, 80% of the people that are really selling ad sales at the highest level are women. I mean, the ones
Right.
that are out there knocking on doors. I'm not talking about the executives and the
Right.
CEOs. I'm talking about the people that are actually doing the work are women. And you know where probably 80% of those women live? New York,
Yeah.
like New York City, because that's the hub. That is the center of the advertising universe. Yes, there's LA. Yes, there's Chicago. There's even some in Minneapolis.
Madison
Small.
Avenue is still a thing in 2024.
It's probably 80% of the market.
Yes.
So now you've got 20 something, generally speaking, 28 to probably 44 would be the age range that I experienced.
Right.
And I'm talking about executives and the people out knocking on doors. Young women in New York are not going to have a high opinion of this. It's going to make them feel squeamish. So whatever, we'll find out. It's just, to me, the timing is like, okay, I get it. Maybe do it on my pay-per-view. Don't do it on my television show. Adjust if I'm so committed to making these two women bleed all over each other, okay, you can sell me on that if you need to. I understand it. On television, though, it's just that's not hate, that's not jealousy, it's an envy, it's disappointment. Another opportunity. And it's just, I don't know, whatever. Change the subject, I guess.
Let's talk about something else I'm enjoying creatively with AEW. For the first time in a while, I'm really into two at the same time lady storylines. Normally there's one that I can sort of get behind, but there's two now. Not just the Tony Storm, Maria May, but now we've got Mercedes Mone and Britt Baker. I'm glad that Britt's back. She's an AEW original. The crowd is all about it. It's clear from the day one, you and I felt like Mercedes, although she's being celebrated and positioned as a babyface, she's a heel, as Bruce would say in his Jim Cornette voice. So I like the idea that Britt Baker is now positioned to be the babyface and Mercedes is positioned to be the heel. And it certainly appears to the live audience anyway, if you're taking a listen, these crowds, man, they're firmly behind Britt Baker. Is this just what the doctor ordered, pardon the pun, for Mercedes Mone?
I think it's great. I am a fan of Dr. Baker. And if I lived closer, I'd even have her work on my teeth. And I got a mouthful of money. Trust me when I tell you. She'd had a heyday. She wouldn't even have to wrestle anymore if she had me as a patient. She'd be floating around on a boat on her own Caribbean island somewhere. But I think I'm excited for her. I'm also mildly enthusiastic until I see more. Mildly enthusiastic about the opportunity here. I think that the way they brought in Mercedes was such an obvious misfire. I mean, that wasn't even a misfire. That was just a dud. Just nothing happened. It was actually worse than bad. And it set Mercedes back because, again, when you manage, and I'm sure it's the same in your mortgage business, Conrad, running the business. You've got to managing expectations is important in almost every aspect of business, whether you're buying, selling, managing people, whatever the case may be. And then from a creative perspective, managing expectations has a lot to do with how you build someone before they come in. Do you do a pre-build? Do you tease them? If so, how do you tease them? What's that look like? Build up to it, create some anticipation. That's normally how it's done. And I guess they went the wrong way right out of the chute, which set Mercedes back because everybody expected so much and they didn't get what they expected. Now they've got a bad taste in their mouth. It's like going to the refrigerator, thinking that you're grabbing a carton of milk, when you've had a couple too many cocktails and you're staggering around 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, and one eye open, one eye closed, you stub your toe on the refrigerator, you open it up. I'm going to reach in, I'm going to grab some milk. Oh, I just, my mouth breather, my throat's all dry. And I go to take that first chug of milk and it's orange juice. And your brain just shuts the hell down. Your throat closes up. Your eyes start bulging out of your head because you were expecting milk, but you got orange juice. And that's what happened to Mercedes. That's funny. That was a good analogy. But now look, it's almost like this is cool enough for me that I can almost pretend I didn't see what I saw a couple months ago. I can almost forget it. It's like, okay, it's a bad dream. It just happened. Boom. It'll never happen again. Let's move on and see what this is all about. I'm to that point. I'm not almost to that point. I'm at that point. Mostly because somebody woke up and said, she's not a baby face. We should have never done that. So let's make her heel. Good decision. Let's bring back Britt. Better decision. No, not better, just as good.
SaveWithConrad.com.
I'm Nick Castillo from Waterville, Ohio. I've listened to several of his podcasts for a few years and have always heard the ads for Save with Conrad. And my wife and I were looking to refinance, and we had looked into a couple different options. And then I had remembered one of the ads and contacted you guys, and here we are. We had some debt that we accumulated, and we wanted to pay it down, get everything in under a much better, more manageable APR. So smooth. I've never had anything finance go that easy. We got a chance to work with Francis and Larry. They made everything comfortable. They were very personable. They were on top of everything. They made sure we were on top of everything. They were with us every step of the way, kind of guiding us. So like I said, I've never had an experience that went that smooth. Right off the bat, we saved at least $250 a month. Within a couple of months, we'll probably be at the 400 to 500 mark a month. I'm Nick Castillo from Waterville, Ohio, and I've saved over $400 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com.